Claire's door slammed shut behind her just as my phone vibrated against the Formica countertop. I jolted upright, the metallic tang of yesterday's coffee still clinging to my tongue, and stared at the screen, an unknown number. My heart thudded as I tapped View, revealing a grainy photo of Claire, hoodie half-zipped, hair damp, stepping into Peter Hollis's open apartment door across the hall. The timestamp read, last night, 11:23 p.m. My breath caught. Outside, the low hum of Lexington Avenue traffic drifted through our windows, indifferent to the rupture in my world. I watched Claire's silhouette, framed by Peter's living room light, as his arm closed around her waist. Her head tilted toward his shoulder, lips curved in a momentary smile. My chest constricted, and I gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white. She's supposed to be on that marketing trip in Chicago. My internal monologue wrestled with denial. I set the coffee mug down, sending a ripple of bitterness across the counter. The brass mantel clock in the living room chimed 6, its pendulum rocking with mechanical reliability, mocking the chaos unfolding in my mind. My vision blurred as panic flared. I stepped back, knocking against the kitchen chair, nearly spilling the last of my cold coffee. The acrid scent of burnt espresso filled the air, an unwelcome reminder that even familiar comforts could turn sour. For a moment, I closed my eyes, willing my racing heart to settle. Get hold of yourself. You need facts before you accuse her. I reopened my eyes and stared at the photo again, Claire's hoodie in our shared gray, Peter's t-shirt one shade darker. Behind them, the hallway light flickered, casting long shadows on the apartment numbers, 4A for ours, 4B for his. My mind whipped through every conversation from the past week, her promise to catch up on emails when I was away, the excuse of late work dinners, the extra time she'd spent tending our daughter, Emma, before slipping out at night. None of it seemed innocent anymore. I set my phone on the counter and dragged unsteady hands down my face. Stay calm. My gaze drifted to the mantel clock's brass face, its second hand marking each pulse of time. You can't let this stop you. I forced myself to finish the coffee's dregs, grimacing at its bitterness. The traffic's hum, once background noise, now felt loud, urgent. I opened our shared messaging app, thumb hovering over Peter's contact, saved as P. Hollis, but the conversation was empty. No recent calls, no missed texts. He would be silent, she'd silenced him. I slid the phone into my pocket and exhaled, steeling myself against the surge of betrayal. My gaze fell on Emma's stuffed owl perched on the armchair, its button eyes wide, innocent. Guilt and sorrow coiled in my chest. I needed evidence beyond this single photo before confronting Claire. I could almost hear her light laughter echoing from that hallway, feel Peter's warmth as he drew her close. I walked through the living room, stepping over Emma's scattered blocks, toward my home office. The brass mantel clock's ticking followed me, methodical, unrelenting. Breathe. I pulled open my laptop, fingers trembling as I saved the photo into a new folder labeled Evidence. Each keystroke felt like forging armor, necessary, deliberate. The hallway outside our apartment remained silent. Dawn's gray light seeped through the windows as I exhaled, determination stealing my voice. I will uncover the truth and protect our family. With that resolve, I began planning my next steps. The brass mantel clock in our living room ticked steadily as I sank onto the worn leather couch, its pendulum swinging in a reassuring rhythm. I closed my eyes and let myself drift back to the day Claire and I first moved into our Borum Hill loft, June 15, 2018, the smell of fresh paint mingling with syrupy waffle batter from the diner below. We'd marveled at the high ceilings as we assembled a white crib for Emma, our infant daughter, and installed a small brass clock on the nursery shelf, its steady tick promising that, together, we could keep time as a family. That early summer was a blur of date nights at Chavez's Pizzeria, where Claire's laughter would echo under string lights as we shared a wood-fired pepperoni pie. I'd watch her eyes light up over the warmth of melted cheese, brushing a lock of hair from her face as if marking each tender moment. We painted the nursery pale yellow on a lazy Sunday, measuring walls by the flicker of the mantel clock's brass face, and Claire hummed lullabies as she tested millet bundles in Emma's crib. Our wedding on May 12, 2019, at Prospect Park's boathouse, felt like the natural crescendo of that joy. I remember how Claire's veil caught every breeze as we exchanged vows beneath oak branches, the brass clock at the Boathouse Cafe chiming precisely at noon. We toasted with sparkling cider, imagining our future, weekends at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, rainy afternoons building Lego forts with Emma. At the reception, Claire and I danced under a canopy of paper lanterns, her head resting on my shoulder, and I felt certain nothing could ever disrupt our bond. When Emma learned to crawl on October 3, 2019, Claire spent hours coaxing her forward, clapping and cheering. The clock's pendulum ticked in the hallway as I peeked in, feeling pride swell. I carried Emma to daycare every morning, Little Scholars Academy on Smith Street, while Claire began working part-time from home for a local marketing firm. Our evenings fell into a comforting routine: dinner at 6 p.m., bedtime stories at 7:30 p.m., then quiet moments on the couch before the brass mantel clock chimed 9 p.m. We were building a life defined by small rituals. But in September 2020, subtle shifts began. I noticed Claire leaving late at night, 10:15 p.m. on September 23, her destination, Gotham Coffee, according to the Lyft receipt, yet I believed she was working on a marketing pitch. When I asked the next morning, she laughed softly. It was just a study group meeting. I swallowed my unease and nodded. The brass clock ticked on the mantel as I forced a smile. Then came the bar tab on October 12, 2020, $68 at the Red Door Lounge, billed to post-work decompress. She said it was a celebratory drink with colleagues. I glanced at our wall calendar, my business trip to Chicago that week, and let her explanation stand. In hindsight, that receipt feels like the first flicker of doubt beneath the mantel clock's steady tick. On November 5, 2020, I found a message on her phone: "Can't wait to see you tonight," sent at 11:04 p.m., addressed not to me but to Peter. I stared at the screen, confusion blooming in my chest. She'd promised to come home by 9 p.m., after her video presentation rehearsal. When I confronted her gently, she said it was a reply to a college friend checking in. At 1 a.m., I heard her on the phone in the hallway: "Hushed, I can't risk being caught." My heart tightened as I tiptoed closer, but the moment passed when she returned, flushed and silent. I placed her phone on the kitchen counter and let her excuses wash over me. A neighbor, Anna in 3B, once mentioned over coffee, "I've seen Claire at Peter's door late, they chat so warmly." I brushed it off, recalling how Claire had praised Peter's green thumb when borrowing basil from our herb garden. I told myself I was jealous, not suspicious. The brass mantel clock ticked overhead, its pendulum swinging a steady reminder to trust my wife. But on March 3, 2021, the brass clock caught my eye as it struck 2 a.m. and there was no sign of Claire. When I opened the front door, I saw that Lyft receipt for Gotham Coffee at 1:45 a.m. taped beneath the side table, a small brass key taped to its side labeled Peter's apartment. My heart hammered. I confronted her the next morning, and she said she'd been helping Peter with his taxes, case closed. Yet even then, something churned in my chest: the stack of gym shoes at our entry, none hers, the faint smell of Peter's cologne in our bedroom, the constant stream of late-night work emails while I traveled for clients. I would return, bleary-eyed, to find Claire's digital receipts: dinner for two, $112, Salumeria, on April 10, 2021, bundled in her purse. She'd say she grabbed a bite on the way home because I was delayed. The brass pendulum clock ticked on, marking time I once believed was shared but now felt stolen. Now, as I sit here recalling each overlooked detail, the brass mantel clock's pendulum seems to swing with accusation. I scroll through their bank statements again: recurring charges to Peter's apt on March 28, April 2, and April 8, always past 10 p.m. I run a hand over the clock's brass face and vow not to ignore these signs any longer. Each tick is a heartbeat guiding me toward the truth I must face. The building's hallway remains silent beyond the apartment door. Dawn's pale light filters in, but the pendulum's steady sway reminds me that while the past echo of betrayal lingers, I will now turn suspicion into evidence and resolve to reclaim our family's future, one methodical step at a time. The brass mantel clock's pendulum ticked steadily as I sat at our kitchen table, letting the morning sunlight slide across its polished surface. I tapped a spoon against an empty coffee cup, tracing the rim with a thumb. After recounting every troubling memory and late-night receipt, I knew I couldn't dither any longer. I needed help. I dialed my brother Daniel, who answered on the second ring. "David, everything all right?" "I need you here," I said, voice tight. "Can you catch the next train to Williamsburg?" "I'm on it," he replied, concern cutting through the early rush in his voice. I hung up and called Marisol Torres, our family's longtime counselor. She agreed to meet me at Commons Cafe in Union Square by 10 a.m. April 20, 2025, 10 a.m. Commons's muted chatter and the hiss of espresso machines provided a calm backdrop. I slid into the booth opposite Marisol, careful not to slouch. She offered a gentle nod. "Talk to me," she said. I slid my phone across the table, revealing the April 12th photo of Claire on Peter's couch and a screenshot of her April 17th text, "I can't stop thinking about you." Marisol's face was sympathetic, but her tone remained steady. "You're doing the right thing by documenting everything. Now, we need to chart how this is affecting Emma." I nodded, pulling my leather-bound journal from my bag. The pages were filled with detailed notes: Emma's clinginess on April 18th, calling out "Mama" in her sleep, and refusing her favorite bedtime story. Marisol suggested I continue logging each sign, record every time she asks for Claire, every night terrors, every moment she senses something isn't right. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote. April 20th, 2025, 9:15 p.m., Emma woke crying, asked, "Where's Mommy? Did she forget me?" Held her until 9:45 p.m. before she fell asleep. If custody became contested, these entries would matter. Marisol smiled gently. "I'll prepare a brief letter summarizing Emma's emotional distress that you can submit as evidence." April 20th, 2025, 2 p.m. On my way back to the loft, I dialed attorney Elisa Wu's office near the East River. Her voicemail greeted me. I left a terse message. "Mark Taylor here. All evidence compiled and ready. Can we meet tomorrow? It's urgent." By the time I returned home, Daniel had arrived with 2 large binders, colored tabs, and stacks of sticky notes. He hugged Emma, who toddled giggling into his arms. Watching them, I felt a sharp pang. This was exactly why I had to be methodical. We labeled one binder texts and emails, the other receipts and bank records. Together, we worked through each category. 1 Texts and emails. April 12th screenshot, Claire and Peter in 4B at 11:23 p.m. April 17th text, "I can't stop thinking about you." Any deleted messages I had archived earlier. 2 Receipts and bank records. April 11th lift to Gotham Coffee, at 10:30 p.m., $12.50. April 12th lift to Peter's Building, 10:45 p.m., $15.75. April 17th, dinner for 2, at Salumeria, $112. March 28th gym membership charge for Ridgewood Fitness, $950. We stapled each printout onto legal-sized paper, annotating margins with dates and times. Each receipt was a microcosm of deceit. Daniel paused at the dinner for 2 charge. "She told you that was a work dinner?" he asked. I nodded, tight-lipped. "Salumeria is 2 blocks from Peter's. She said it was with a colleague. I didn't think to check the details." Daniel marked the charge with a red tab. "We'll show how every excuse unravels." April 21st, 2025, 9 a.m. I met Elisa Wu in her Brooklyn office. The brass hourglass on her desk reminded me of our mantel clock swing. She greeted me with a firm handshake. I laid the binders in front of her. She thumbed through texts and emails and nodded. "This is substantial, Mark. We'll file for legal separation and draft a custody proposal that emphasizes Emma's need for stability." She turned to receipts and bank records. "These charges paint a clear picture of deception. We'll request any available security camera footage from your building's hallway. Did you get that installed yet?" I handed her an SD card labeled 4A cams, April 12th to 18th. "Yes. I mounted cameras at our front door and in the hallway. This footage shows Claire leaving at 10:45 p.m. on April 12th and returning at 1:12 a.m. Elisa clicked an icon on her laptop, bringing up a still from April 12th, Claire's silhouette entering 4B. "Perfect. We'll include these stills." Her pen hovered over a blank legal template. "We file on May 1st at 9 a.m. I'll prepare a temporary custody order. For now, it will be presumed Emma stays with you, and Claire can have supervised visits." She slid a preliminary custody outline across. "Primary residential custody, Emma with Mark. Supervised visits, Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., at a neutral location. Child support, $1,100 per month from Claire, covering daycare, pediatric visits, therapy fund of $500. Therapeutic counseling, weekly sessions for Emma with a licensed child therapist. I studied the outline, each clause a step toward restoring order. April 22, 2025, 6:30 p.m. Back home, I met Marisol for a video call. She guided me on documenting Emma's emotional trajectory. Tonight, note every time Emma asks for Claire. Record her nightmares, her clinginess. These details show the judge how deep the impact runs. I jotted. April 22 to 8:45 p.m., Emma asked if Claire would read her bedtime story. Cries when told, Mommy's working. April 22 to 10:15 p.m., night terrors, Emma sobbed, no mommy. No leave me. Held her until quiet. Marisol smiled through the screen. These entries will matter. They're evidence of how her absence affects Emma. April 23, 2025, 8 p.m. Daniel and I spent the evening finalizing our binders. He color-coded tabs, red for text evidence, blue for financial records, green for security footage, and yellow for child welfare. Each binder spine bore neat labels in black ink. I texted Elisa. Binders complete. Moments later, her reply. Excellent. I'll review tonight and schedule filing for Friday. Despite the late hour, I felt an unexpected calm. Each piece of paper, each logged entry, each consultation had forged a clear path forward. That night, I held the brass mantel clock's pendulum in my hand, standing in Emma's dimly lit nursery. She lay asleep, clutching her stuffed owl. The pendulum's steady tick resonated through the room as I whispered, tomorrow, we reclaim our life. And with that, I closed the journal and placed the clock gently on Emma's dresser, its rhythmic swing a promise that, though betrayal had fractured our world, we would rebuild it, one deliberate step at a time. On May 1, 2025, I arrived at Elisa Wu's Prospect Heights office, the brass mantel clock tick-tocking behind me. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, catching its polished surface. Claire sat across from me, shoulders taut, eyes rimmed with fatigue. I placed the large manila folder labeled, Evidence, May motion, between us and inhaled slowly. Claire, I began, voice steady, I need you to look at this. I opened to the first page, a screenshot of her April 17 text to Peter, I need to feel alive again. Below, his reply, tonight at my place, can't wait. Claire's hand trembled as she traced the words on the page. Elisa added, we also have April 12 security stills. She slid 2 photographs forward, one showing Claire's silhouette stepping into Peter's hallway at 10:45 p.m., and another at 1:12 a.m. showing Peter's arm around her waist as they leaned against his couch. Claire's face went pale, and I watched her swallow hard. I continued, I found a $68 Gotham Coffee Lyft charge on April 11 at 10:30 p.m., and a $112 dinner for 2 at Salumeria on April 13. You told me those were late-night meetings with colleagues. My tone was calm, each word deliberate. The brass clock's pendulum clicked behind us, each swing underlining my resolve. Claire's lip quivered. I was lonely, she whispered, eyes downcast. You were away so much for work. I cut in quietly, you used our home's quiet to slip away, Claire. You knew Emma would be asleep. I reached into the folder and pulled out a small brass key taped under our side table, labeled in Claire's handwriting, Peter's apartment. I placed it atop the closed wedding photo I'd chosen for this moment, our June 5, 2019 ceremony under Brooklyn Bridge lights. This key opened our life, I said, voice measured. You left Emma alone with her father to be here. I held Claire's gaze as the brass mantel clock chimed 9 a.m. in my mind. Trust isn't something you can borrow and return. You shattered it. Claire's shoulders slumped, tears spilled. I'm sorry, she murmured, voice barely audible. Elisa closed the evidence folder gently. Mark will file the separation petition today. The court will issue a temporary custody order, Emma stays with Mark, Claire's visits are supervised. Child support and therapy arrangements follow. Her tone was professional but sympathetic. I stood, buttoning my blazer. My gaze never wavered from Claire's as I spoke softly, goodbye, Claire. No anger, only quiet resolve. Stepping into the bright May 1 afternoon, the brass mantel clock's rhythm echoed in my chest, its pendulum's unwavering swing a reminder that though betrayal had fractured my world, I would move forward. As the office door clicked shut behind me, I felt the first breath of clarity since that initial text. I would rebuild our life, one steady tick at a time. 2 weeks later, May 15, 2025, I sat in Brooklyn family court as Judge Nguyen signed the final divorce decree. Claire relinquished our Boerum Hill loft and agreed to supervised weekend visits for Emma, 3, contingent on completing family counseling and securing stable housing. I obtained primary residential custody. A support order required Claire's monthly payment of $1,100, covering Emma's daycare at Little Scholars Academy, pediatric visits at Brooklyn Children's Clinic, and a $500 summer therapy fund. Each clause felt like a fresh plank in rebuilding stability for my daughter. That evening, I returned home and removed Claire's yoga mat and weights from the shelf, placing them in a donation box by the door. I hung a new framed photo above the mantel, Emma's first ballet recital at the Brooklyn Academy on May 10, 2025, her pink tutu sparkling under stage lights. The brass mantel clock now stood beside it, its pendulum ticking a steady promise of routine. Over the next 2 weeks, late May 2025, I re-established a nurturing schedule. Mornings began with oatmeal and story time. At 8 a.m., I dropped Emma at Little Scholars, her tiny hand waving from the school steps. Afternoons meant Prospect Park visits, picnic blankets spread under oak trees, Emma's laughter mingling with carousel music. Evenings were reserved for bedtime lullabies, the brass clock's gentle tick echoing as I held Emma close until her eyes drifted closed. Each ritual rebuilt trust through consistency. I also reconnected with my own passions. On May 20th, I dusted off my late grandfather's woodworking tools in the garage, carving a cedar birdhouse for our balcony. The rhythmic rasp of sandpaper against wood echoed the clock's pendulum, a comforting reminder that every new creation begins with patient strokes. Sunday mornings, Daniel and I resumed our hikes in the Hudson Highlands, swapping stories under budding maple leaves. Marisol continued counseling sessions with Emma, guiding her through play therapy. Emma's clinginess receded, she delighted once more in chasing ducks at Brooklyn Bridge Park and devouring frozen yogurt from Ample Hills on May 28th. Each smile and carefree giggle felt like evidence of healing. On May 30, 2025, after tucking Emma into bed, I opened my laptop and drafted my first blog post for From Betrayal to Balance. I wrote about methodical evidence gathering, preserving composure under pressure, and placing a child's well-being above bitterness. By midnight, I clicked publish and watched supportive messages stream in. Your story gave me strength, thank you for showing how to rebuild. I smiled, outlining future posts, co-parenting with integrity, finding solitude as strength, and mentoring others through heartache. On May 31, 2025, Emma and I picnicked at Brooklyn Bridge Park. She skipped among daisies, clutching her stuffed owl, while I gazed at the Manhattan skyline glowing at dusk. I checked the brass mantel clock, it's ticking a promise that every moment counts. In Emma's laughter, I discovered renewed purpose. Love isn't defined by fidelity alone, but by the resilience to transform betrayal into a bright new beginning. The clock's pendulum swung on my mantel, steady and unbroken, reminding me that time moves forward, and so do I.